Hello class, this is the review video for Unit 2.2, Christian Action. Your test is coming up, so I wanted to post a review video for you, so let's get right to it. First of all, I'm going to talk about the essay, which is probably the hardest essay I've given you so far this year. I really want you to prepare for it and study for it. However, if you prepare for it, I think you'll be ready to go. So we're going to be looking at notes number 3, so the PowerPoint is there, and the handout, which will also be very important because it has very relevant scripture verses on the back, is right there. You can find both of these on Edline under Notes and Assignments, as you can find everything from this unit. So first of all, let's look at the question. The question is, explain Jesus' approach to morality. What are the major themes? As examples of this, you may wish to include his interpretation of the Ten Commandments, or his message of the Beatitudes, or a story of the rich young man. So you're going to have to choose one of these three to talk about Jesus' major themes. So what are the major themes of Jesus' morality? Let's go to the notes for that. So the major themes, these are his 3 ingredients. He starts with good actions, but it's not just enough to do good actions. You have to have a good character, be a virtuous person, to go deeper than those actions, to follow the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law. That would be a good phrase to throw in there somewhere, actually. I would throw that phrase in there. And the third one is to have a relationship with God, not just rely on our own efforts, but to rely on God. So those are the 3 things. 1, good actions, good character, virtue, spirit of the law, not the letter of the law, or not just the letter of the law, you could say there, and then relationship with God. Those are the 3 themes. Now, you get to pick how you talk about those 3 themes. Do you want to use his interpretations and commandments, the Beatitudes, or the story of the rich young man? For these 3, these are also in the PowerPoint, right there, or they're also on the back of your notes page for notes 3. Okay, so this is the notes page where you took all the notes on that. You got the 10 Commandments right there, and then on the back, you have the Beatitudes. That's option number 1, teaching on the commandments. Option number 2, story of the rich young man. Option number 3, I would recommend using the story of the rich young man just because it's the most clear. It walks through each of those 3 very significant, very simply and in order. So I would recommend most people do story of the rich young man. This one probably has a little more to memorize, but also spells it out pretty clearly. The Beatitudes is the hardest, so I wouldn't do the Beatitudes unless you're really looking to impress me and you're really confident in your ability to, if you think you really get this and understand it and you want to impress me and go the extra mile, then I would go with that. Okay, but I would think most people are going to do the story of the rich young man. Okay, so I'm going to go through and identify where you can find each of these 3 themes in these passages. Let's start with the story of the rich young man. The guy asked Jesus, what must I do to gain eternal life? And Jesus says, keep the commandments. That's ingredient number 1. Act well, do good actions. And he says, oh yeah, I've done all those things. And he says, well then go sell what you have and give to the poor. So here Jesus is asking him to go deeper, to go the extra mile, to follow the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law, to be a person of virtue and generosity. Okay? And the last thing he says is, then come follow me. So that's the relationship with God. That's ingredient number 3. So if you can spell all that out, that's probably the easiest, simplest way to answer that essay. Now, you can also find all 3 of these themes in the teaching on the commandments, okay, because Jesus says, I haven't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill. This is saying, I'm not just, good actions are a good starting place, but you also have to develop good character. When they ask him what is the greatest commandment, okay, he doesn't list one of the 10 commandments. He says, you shall love. Okay, again, he's starting with an action, and then he focuses on character, a virtue. Okay, but also notice what he says here. You shall love the Lord your God, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So he's also emphasizing that relationship with God, number 3 there. Okay, and then when he talks about thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not commit adultery, again, they're both examples of he takes a commandment, talking about an action, and then goes deeper to talk about the virtue underlying. Okay, he says, you've heard you shall not kill, but I say don't even get angry, don't even be wrathful with your brother. And he says, you've heard it said you shall not commit adultery, but I say do not even look at someone with lust. So again, he's starting with the action and going deeper, the spirit of the law, to talk about the virtue, and then there's that relationship with God in there as well. Okay, the Beatitudes is the hardest. Okay, so he's starting off his Sermon on the Mount, which is his discourse, his speech on morality. And instead of giving us 10 commandments, he gives us 10 virtues. The Beatitudes are lists of virtues. They're good qualities. So again, instead of just focusing on actions, he's focusing on character, the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law. And then so many of these have to do with relationship with God. Be a person who's clean of heart so you can see God. Be a peacemaker, for you will be a child of God. Blessed are you when when they persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. So notice that the relationship to God is tied into the virtues here very clearly. Okay? Again, the Beatitudes is probably the hardest. Story of the Rich Young Man is probably the easiest. I would recommend most people do the Story of the Rich Young Man. Okay? So that is enough on the essay. Let's go through the rest of it. We'll just start right at the top. So you'll notice PowerPoint number 5, I'm sorry, not number 5, number 2 will help you with pretty much all these terms, okay? Over here you have the 7 main vices, over here you have the 7 main virtues, okay? These, faith, hope, and love, are the theological virtues. Those are the ones that you really need a relationship with God to develop. These are the cardinal virtues, and these are the building blocks of all other virtues. Over here you have the 7 deadly sins or the 7 deadly vices, and you can remember those by Pegg's Law, P-E-G-S-L-A-W. But let's go through them. So first of all, the 7 deadly vices. Pride is selfishness. No, we're not talking about like plotty pride, like self-confidence, healthy self-confidence sort of pride. We're talking about like a selfish pride. And pride is the root of all the other vices, because they're all based in selfishness. Okay, envy is like obsessing and coveting what somebody else has, what a lot of times people call jealousy. Gluttony is overindulging in all sorts of things, but most of the time we talk about food. Sloth is laziness. Lust is a selfish sexual desire, kind of a pervertedness. And we talked about the difference between like a lustful, perverted sexual desire and then kind of a normal sexual desire. We talked about the difference between these two pictures, even though they're of the same person. One is much more lustful because it's more of a kind of a seductive, more lustful picture, and this one, well, no less, beautiful, is not as focused on like the sexual perverseness of it. Okay. And avarice is just a fancy word for greed that we use because it helps the Pegg's. If we didn't, it wouldn't spell Pegg's Law if we used a G here. So that's just a way to help you remember it. And then wrath is uncontrolled anger. Now again, anger in itself is not evil, but uncontrolled anger, when you let your anger get the best of you. Okay, so that's our vices right there. Our virtues, the cardinal virtues are temperance, prudence, fortitude, and courage. Temperance, prudence, fortitude, and justice. Temperance is having moderation or balance in the things that you do or consume. Prudence is a sort of practical wisdom, common sense, good judgment. Fortitude or courage is doing the right thing even when it's hard, even when it's difficult. And justice is being fair, treating people as they deserve to be treated as children of God. Those are the 4 cardinal virtues, and again, those are the building blocks of all the other virtues. The theological virtues are faith, hope, and love, and these are what we need a relationship with God to truly have these. Faith, our definition of faith all year long has been to know, love, and serve God, to have a belief in God, a relationship with God, and to act on it. I'm going to sum that all up here by just saying it's a dedication to God. Knowing, loving, and serving God is dedication. Hope is trusting that God will win over evil in the world, that hoping that and trusting that pretty much everything that happens in the world it's all going to work out as part of God's providence in the end. In the end, and the last one, love, is the greatest of all the virtues, is a selfless commitment to the good of another. We're not talking about eros here, which is kind of like romantic feelings of love. Here we're talking about doing loving things, putting other people first, a selflessness, godly love, a sacrificial love. Greatest virtue, love. Greatest vice, pride. Define morality. Morality is knowing and choosing right from wrong. You can find this in notes 1. Define conscience. You can also find this in notes 1. This is our interior decision maker. The Beatitudes are a list of statements by Jesus about how to live a blessed and happy life. They're virtues, basically. What do the Beatitudes tell us about morality? That it's about more than just action. It's about being a person of virtue, and that will lead us to happiness. 3 parts of a moral act. This can also be found in notes number 1. The object, which is the act itself, what you're doing. The intention, which is what are you hoping to accomplish, what's your reason. And the consequences, what will happen as a result. Those are the 3 parts of a moral act. 2 ways of knowing right and wrong are also in notes 1. That's natural law, which is our natural understanding of fair and unfair, right and wrong. And the Declaration of Independence that says these truths are self-evident would be an example of that, because it's not saying, oh, God told us. It's saying, oh, these things are evident to us. They're just, the evidence is within ourselves. Divine law is the other way, and divine law comes from what God reveals to us, like the 10 Commandments. That would be like, oh, God said don't do this. That's divine law. What is free will? That's also in notes number 1. Free will is the choice or the ability to choose right from wrong. And it allows us to love and sin, but God gave it to us so that we can love. He didn't want us to sin, but if he didn't give us that option, then it wouldn't really be love when we chose to love. It would just be, what we had to do. So this is a way that we are like God. It gives us the power to love like God because it's freely chosen. It's not just, we're not slaves. The 2 responsibilities we have in regard to our conscience are to form it and to obey it. We have to form it well by, reading the Bible and praying and going to church and listening to our teachers and thinking about things and reading and studying, and then we have to obey it. We have to do what we think is best. Familiar with the 10 Commandments and Jesus' interpretation, specifically on killing and adultery, and know the greatest commandment. That can be found on the back of handout 3, which we already went over. Difference between the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. The spirit of the law is what the law means, and the letter of the law is just like what the law says. So if like your little brother was bothering you and you said, don't touch me, and then he was like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. He followed the letter of the law. He did technically what you said, but he wasn't following the spirit of the law. He wasn't doing what you meant. Or think of someone who is a really terrible driver, but they're still driving the speed limit. Yes, they're following the letter of the law, but if they're still being dangerous, they might not be technically breaking the law, but they might be breaking the spirit of the law by being a dangerous bad driver. Familiar with the story of the rich young man? We already did that when talking about the essay. All right, the spiritual works of mercy and the corporal works of mercy. This is in notes number 4. And for the test, you'll need to know an example or 2 of each of these. So, I would be able to list a couple of each of these and give an example. So the corporal works of mercy have to do with our bodies, ways you're merciful towards people's bodies. And spiritual works of mercy are ways that you're merciful towards people's souls, their spirit. So like their emotions, their imagination, their will, their memory, their feelings, all those sorts of things. Whoop, I just opened a program. That was not what I wanted to do. Where are we? What is sin? Sorry, I'm going to close this real quick. What is sin? There's a whole PowerPoint on this and a whole lecture on this. So I'm not going to go over this again because there's a whole lecture on this same YouTube channel that goes through all the stuff on sin. So you can get that there, and that's linked under notes and assignments as well. And I think that is everything on the study guide. So good luck, and I will see you at the test. Bye-bye.